Your phone buzzes. A piercing alarm fills the room, and the screen tells you a ballistic missile is heading for your city right now. You have, at best, 15 minutes before impact. Your immediate instinct is probably not to run for the basement. It's to check your phone, look out the window, and try to convince yourself it's a scam or a glitch. Your brain is wired to ignore impossible threats, even when the countdown has already started. Emergency management researchers call this psychological trap milling. Instead of taking immediate shelter, the vast majority of people freeze, gather information, and text their friends to see if the threat is actually real. We saw this play out in 2018, when a live inbound ballistic missile alert was mistakenly sent to every phone in Hawaii. Researchers studying the response found that while some panicked, nearly half of the respondents simply disbelieved the message. Some finished their breakfast. One man went back to sleep. The average person took about 12 to 15 minutes to determine if the Hawaii alert was credible before taking any action. In a real launch, those 15 minutes are your entire margin between life and death. If you manage to beat the milling trap, your second instinct kicks in. You grab your family, jump in the car, and try to put distance between yourself and the blast zone. Even people who spend years preparing for the worst fall for this. They load up a truck with freeze-dried food and bug-out bags, backing out of their driveway and heading for the countryside. But every other person in a 15-mile radius has the exact same idea. Within minutes, the roads are completely deadlocked. People abandon their vehicles, leaving themselves entirely exposed in the open air. We are taught from childhood that motion equals survival, but in a nuclear event, stepping outside to run guarantees lethal radiation exposure. This diagram illustrates a concept called protection factor. It's a measurement emergency planners use to quantify exactly how much a structure reduces your radiation exposure compared to standing outside. Looking at this side of the screen, you can see that a fully stocked evacuation vehicle has a protection factor of roughly 2. The metal frame provides negligible shielding, and the glass provides absolutely none. Compare that to a standard, unfinished suburban basement. Surrounded by dense concrete and packed soil, it offers a protection factor of anywhere from 10 to 40, meaning you receive a tiny fraction of the outside dose. The problem is that gamma radiation bypasses our brain's natural threat detection system. It is completely invisible, odorless, and makes no sound. It doesn't look like a fire or a flood. You cannot rely on your savanna-evolved senses to keep you safe here. Surviving a detonation relies entirely on outcalculating the physics of radiation using dense matter. The true lethality of a nuclear event doesn't present itself as fire and brimstone. It arrives quietly as a harmless-looking dusting of gray ash that tricks our senses into thinking the worst is over. Once the fallout begins, your greatest weapon isn't a gas mask or a bunker. It is the mathematical decay of radiation over time. This graph plots what emergency planners call the 7-10 rule. It dictates that for every 7-fold increase in time after a detonation, the radiation dose rate drops by a factor of 10. By hour 7, the lethality is 1/10 of what it was at hour 1. Following this curve further out, you can see that by hour 49, the radiation outside is down to just 1% of its initial peak. Time itself works against the fallout. The math proves that the single most vital action you can take to survive is simply to sit perfectly still in a basement for 2 days. If you do get caught outside during those early hours, immediate decontamination is straightforward. Simply removing your outer layer of clothing before re-entering a shelter eliminates up to 90% of radioactive contamination. After that, you need to shower using standard soap and shampoo to wash the remaining ash down the drain. But you must never use hair conditioner. Conditioners contain chemical compounds designed to smooth hair cuticles. In a fallout scenario, they will permanently bind radioactive particles underneath the protein scales of your hair, trapping the radiation directly against your skin. We know this strict adherence to sheltering works. Even inside the flattened ruins of Hiroshima, the closest known survivors lived simply because they were underground in concrete cellars when the blast hit. Surviving the unthinkable doesn't require military gear or a multi-million-dollar compound. It requires understanding basic physics, ignoring every evolutionary instinct you have, and summoning the sheer willpower to sit in the dark and wait.